Welcome to Functional Philosophy, the show in which I, Charles II, explain and apply Ayn Rand's philosophy, objectivism. If you'd like to ask me a question on objectivism or its application, just go to charles2.com/contact. And my last name is spelled T as in tango, E as in echo, and W as in whiskey. Assuming that consciousness and free will are merely the consequence of some arrangement of information/information processing, well, I'm going to interrupt right here already. That is wrong. That is a false premise. You are stealing the concept of information when you say that consciousness can be the result of information processing. Because there is no information without consciousness. What is information? It is that which informs. Well, there is no such thing as informing without something to be informed, and what is informed is consciousness. Now, your statement of this is even more incoherent than usual. You ask, or you say that, assuming that consciousness and free will are merely the consequence of some arrangement of information/information processing, I can't relate to how somebody can think in such sloppy terms. An arrangement of information processing? That doesn't mean anything. You mean an arrangement of things that together constitute a system of information processing? What is an arrangement of information processing, or of information? That makes no sense. Now, people always tell me, oh, Charles, people are confused. They're not dishonest. Wrong. If you write something like this and you are content with it, you are dishonest. You don't even know what you meant by this question. And instead of stopping and trying to get clear on what you actually mean, you just slopped these words down and sent them. This isn't a question of grammar, even, although there are grammatical errors in this. But it's a question of being willing to use words and combinations of words when you don't know what you even mean by them. No, people are generally not just confused. They are dishonest. Being willing to use a word when you don't know what it means is dishonest. This questioner has no idea what he means by information, but he uses the word anyway. Anyway, as I say, no. Consciousness is not a result or consequence of information processing. Consciousness has to first exist for there to even be such a thing as information. There is no information without consciousness. So consciousness cannot be a result of information processing. I discussed this more in depth in my early episode on free will. I think it's number 7. I can't remember, but just look that up. Anyway, so that's the first false premise, and then he goes on, assuming we have figured out how to replicate this digitally, and we have created sentient software running in a digital universe. Again, you thought I was annoyed at the information, the usage of the word information. That is incoherent. Sentient software? What does that mean? And a digital universe? I have no idea what you're referring to, and clearly neither do you. This doesn't mean anything. You're just using words you've heard other people say, with no first-handed understanding of what they mean. What is sentient software? What, an abstract pattern is sentient? The closest plausible thing you could be talking about is some kind of robot. But there could be no such thing as sentient software. To be sentient, you have to have some organs that put you into contact with the physical universe. So you would have to be some kind of robot with some kind of sense organ. You couldn't just be this disembodied software living in a, quote, digital universe, which doesn't mean anything. Now he goes on, we clone, parentheses, copy-paste, this sentient software and its universe and run simultaneously. When we observe the outcome in these two universes at t equals x, should we expect to see that the digital entity has made exactly the same choices and ended up in exactly the same place? If so, doesn't this prove free will is deterministic? This is another thing that just annoys the hell out of me. How can you think so sloppily? You are a dishonest, unscrupulous person. Prove that free will is deterministic? You mean disprove free will? Prove determinism? How can you write, prove free will is deterministic and not realize, oh yeah, that's a sloppy mess. That's not actually what I mean. That's a blatant contradiction. How can you be satisfied with this mess? You are asking this kind of stupid question because you are the kind of person who is willing to think in these sloppy terms. He goes on, it would in essence prove that given a certain set of inputs, this will always be the output. Well, there's another thing that's wrong with this. You're talking about sentience. Sentience is not the same thing as reasoning. It is not the same thing as sapience. Sentient just means conscious. You could possibly take a worm and put it in a situation, and then if you took an identical worm and put it in an identical situation, it would act the same as the first worm, because free will comes in at the rational level, not the level of mere sentience. So no, if you discovered two identical sentient creatures acted exactly the same way in the same circumstances, that wouldn't prove determinism. But anyway, this whole mess of software and computers and digital universes is irrelevant. You may as well just ask, won't two identical people in identical circumstances always act identically? And the answer is no. I have to say, I find even the premise behind this question insulting. The premise is I and other objectivists are so dense that we don't understand what we're saying. We don't understand what our view implies about the nature of consciousness. And so you think that you have to strip away the meat and make this something about software and a digital universe and strip away all of this other stuff so that you can show us morons, no, but don't you understand? You're saying that identical things won't necessarily act identically. Now, I know maybe you don't understand that because you're confused with all of the other irrelevant variables involved in a human being, but look, if you just stripped all that away and you just said, look, we take just consciousness and we digitize it and we just strip away everything else, don't you see what you're saying? Yes, we understand that. Now, you could say that even two human beings are acting, quote, the same way, in the broad sense that they are choosing between the same options. In that sense, two rational beings will always act the same way in the same circumstances. They will always be choosing between the same options. And they can't get out of that. That is the form in which identity and causality apply to free will, but they won't necessarily make the same choice. Or choose the same option, I should say. They will both face the same choice and choose between the same options, but they won't necessarily choose the same option. Now, I think this person is actually a Patreon supporter, so if he is going to drop his support over this, so be it. I don't expect to be successful in the long run anyway, because the world is filled with evil people who don't like it when you tell them the truth. But that's not going to stop me from doing it, at least not in the areas I really care about, and this is an area I really care about. Philosophy, I mean. So do what you will, but understand that so long as you tolerate this incoherence and haziness and second-handedness in your mind and in your thinking method, you will be confused and you will be asking questions this stupid and conventional for the rest of your life. Next question. What are your thoughts on North Korea and what should be done? Well, my thoughts on what should be done about North Korea don't involve North Korea that much. I think we should make a list of those countries that are threatening us, order it in terms of threat level, and then go down the list demanding a dramatic show of abject capitulation from each one, and if they don't satisfy our demand, then we should destroy them with a nuclear missile or bomb, or multiple nuclear missiles or bombs. Now, North Korea would be second on my list. Iran would be first. As a religious state, it worships death and would be much more likely to attack us suicidally. So deterrence is likely to be less effective against a religious state, and for that reason I would put Iran as first on the list, because it is both religious and has been explicitly belligerent toward us. It has threatened us openly. Second, I would put North Korea, because they also have openly threatened the United States. Now, they're not religious, so there's a question of whether you would put Saudi Arabia as second or third in competition with North Korea, but because Saudi Arabia is friendly on its face, officially, I would say Saudi Arabia should be third, because being too cowardly to openly threaten us does say something about their willingness to go against us. So the explicitly belligerent threat should probably be higher on the list, I think. But in any case, if you do what I said, you wouldn't have to worry about North Korea, because as soon as they saw that Iran capitulated or we nuked them, then I don't think you would have much trouble from the North Koreans. They would know we are willing to do what it takes to defend ourselves. Who knows, maybe you'd have to nuke them too, because they would think it was a fluke after decades of appeasement. Now, because of how this relates to the South Koreans, I would offer them the opportunity to deal with this problem themselves. I would give them a certain amount of time to crush North Korea themselves or cause it to give up, so that they could do it in a way that damaged themselves as little as possible. But if they failed or refused, then I would nuke North Korea and utterly destroy it no matter what they did to the South Koreans. North Korea has openly threatened us. We have every right to defend ourselves no matter who it hurts. We have every obligation to defend ourselves no matter how many South Korean men, women, and children get killed in the process. And many undoubtedly would, if it came to our having to nuke them, which is entirely up to North Korea. I hope and expect that North Korea would capitulate after they saw Iran capitulate or be wiped off the face of the earth. But if they didn't, that would mean a lot of civilian casualties, which would all be the responsibility of North Korea. Now, that's all academic, of course, because this won't happen. No one is going to do anything about North Korea, and it will continue to get more and more powerful weapons until it achieves an indisputable capacity to nuke the United States. So it doesn't really matter what the correct policy toward North Korea is, because nobody will ever enact it, but if you are curious, that is the correct policy. Create a list of threats, go down the list, demanding their surrender or destruction. Simple as that. And if we did that, then we wouldn't have to worry about any threats ever again. We wouldn't go around the world toppling dictators. We would simply morally condemn them, but say, we're not going to get involved so long as you monkeys don't let one of the rocks you're throwing at each other stray over here. You better make damn sure you don't. Because if you do, you're getting wiped out. And Islamic terrorists count as rocks. So I would make it clear that given their past support for terrorism, any Islamic terrorist attack on the United States is something that the United States will hold Iran and Saudi Arabia accountable for. So it is in their best interest to make damn sure no terrorists attack the United States. And of course, Pakistan would be on the list too. I mean, I'm not giving an exhaustive list here. I'm just naming the top threats, and I don't think North Korea would be number one. So I don't think we would have to do anything about North Korea, other than show it that we mean business by dealing with what is our number one concern, which is Iran and Islamic terrorism generally. Next, I have edited down this question. I usually don't, but I've edited this one because it was really long, with a lot of information that was ultimately irrelevant. And I've altered it a little bit just so it makes sense. Someone was trying to communicate to me that I should feel better about living in a heaven-like state because all of the pain and fears associated with the human body would be eliminated. Is this a disconnect between the mind and body? Yes, I would say that's what it is. It's the idea that all of the negative aspects of existence, all of our pains come from our physical nature. But if we could just extract our soul from the body, then we wouldn't have to worry about that. And we could just live in a blissful, non-physical state. But there is no such thing as a non-physical state. There is no such thing as consciousness without a body to enable that consciousness. So the idea that heaven would be this great thing, wouldn't it be great if we could just exist in heaven in an incorporeal way, and then we wouldn't have to worry about all the pain and desires and everything of the body? Well, you may as well say, wouldn't it be great if when I put $2 together and $2 together, I ended up with $5? Wouldn't that be great? Well, that's a straight contradiction. So, no, it wouldn't be great. It wouldn't be anything, because it's not anything, because it's a contradiction. You cannot have any benefits without risks. The risk of death, or the possibility of death, is the only thing that makes joy of any scale or degree possible. It's the only thing that makes consciousness possible. The fundamental problem here is that this person is rewriting reality. Wouldn't it be great if we could have pleasure without having to worry about death? Well, that's impossible. So, your friend's attempt to make you feel better, quote unquote, about living in a heaven-like state is pointless. And you shouldn't feel bad about it. You should feel nothing about it. Because the referent of a heaven-like state is nothing. There is no such thing. There can be no such thing. It's a nothing. And you should feel nothing about nothing. You shouldn't fear it. I mean, Christopher Hitchens' celestial dictator idea, that's cute. Oh, wouldn't it be awful if I lived in heaven under God, because God is really this Kim Jong-un of the spiritual world. As I say, that's cute, but really, even thinking about it on that level doesn't mean anything. It wouldn't be awful, because it actually just doesn't make any sense at all. It's not a possible state of existence, so you shouldn't feel good or bad about it. Again, going back to math, it's like, should you feel good or bad about 2 + 2 = 5? Well, you could say, I'd feel bad about it because then I wouldn't know how numbers relate to each other. It would be, unpredictable. And then your friend says, but wouldn't you feel good? Because then if you had $2 and $2, you'd have $5. You'd have extra money. I mean, the whole thing doesn't make any sense. You shouldn't feel anything about it because it doesn't mean anything. If you'd like to keep up with everything I do, just go to charles2.com. If you'd like to enable me to do more, just go to patreon.com/charles2 and become a supporter. Thanks for listening.